Tonight, allow your mind to gently drift away from the cares of the day as we follow an ancient path into the heart of Bharata, recounting the story of Savitri and Satyavan. It is a tale of quiet devotion, profound wisdom, and a love so steadfast that it altered the very threads of destiny. This narrative will unfold slowly, moving with the unhurried rhythm of a calm river, carrying you through moonlit forests and serene kingdoms toward a deep, restorative sleep. In the ancient land of Madra, a kingdom blessed with fertile plains and clear, slow-moving rivers, lived a noble king named Ashvapati. He was a ruler of great virtue, known for his adherence to Dharma, the path of righteousness, and his deep compassion for his subjects. Under his steady governance, the kingdom flourished. The harvests were plentiful, the marketplaces bustled with peaceful trade, and the sounds of contentment echoed from the simplest village homes to the grand halls of the capital. The air itself seemed clearer in Madra, often carrying the scent of sandalwood and jasmine from the palace gardens. Ashvapati was loved and respected, a man whose life seemed outwardly complete, adorned with wisdom and prosperity. Yet, within the quiet, lamp-lit chambers of the palace, beneath the silks and the soft music, the king carried a profound and gentle sorrow. He and his beloved queen were childless. The halls of his ancestors felt empty, the lineage of Madra uncertain, and the future of the kingdom shadowed by the absence of an heir. Driven by this deep longing, King Ashvapati did not succumb to despair. Instead, he turned toward spiritual discipline, seeking the blessings of the divine. He retreated from the daily governance of his kingdom, entrusting it to his capable ministers, and dedicated himself to a life of simplicity and intense prayer. He sought the favor of the goddess Savitri, the divine energy associated with the life-giving light of the sun. So, for 18 long years, Ashvapati maintained this profound austerity. He lived on meager rations, offered countless oblations into the sacred fire, and focused his mind entirely on the radiant form of the goddess. The passage of these years was marked by the slow turning of the seasons. The heat of summer would give way to the rejuvenating monsoon rains. The rains would retreat before the cool clarity of autumn, and winter would bring a quiet stillness to the land. Through all these changes, the king's devotion remained unwavering. Steadfast as the northern star, the sincerity of his penance was absolute. Finally, pleased by his dedication and the purity of his intent, the goddess manifested before him. She emerged from the glowing embers of the sacrificial fire, not in a blinding flash, but with a soft, warm radiance that filled the king's simple hermitage. Her presence was calming, like the first light of dawn spreading across the eastern sky. Her expression was one of profound compassion. She acknowledged the king's long penance and offered him a boon. Ashvapati, bowing low, asked only for children to continue his line and uphold the Dharma of the kingdom. The goddess, foreseeing the future, told him that he would be blessed with a single daughter, a princess of exceptional grace and spiritual strength, who would bring renown to his name. Though he had initially hoped for sons, Ashvapati accepted the boon with deep gratitude, understanding that the divine will moved in ways beyond his immediate comprehension. He returned to his capital. The weight of his sorrow lifted, replaced by a quiet anticipation. The palace stirred back to life, the sounds of celebration returning as the kingdom welcomed their king home. In due time, the queen gave birth to a daughter. She was named Savitri, in honor of the goddess who had granted her life. From the very beginning, it was clear that the child was extraordinary. She grew not just in beauty, but in wisdom and virtue. Her presence was like a lotus blooming in a still pond, serene and radiant. She moved through the palace gardens like a gentle breeze, observing the blooming flowers and the delicate dance of the butterflies. Her education was comprehensive. She mastered the sacred texts, understood the nuances of governance, and carried herself with a dignity that belied her youth. As the years passed, Savitri became the jewel of Madra. Her beauty was so striking, her spirit so luminous, that she seemed to shine with an inner light. When the time came for her marriage, the neighboring princes, though admiring her from afar, felt humbled by her perfection. Few dared to approach King Ashvapati to ask for her hand. They felt inadequate before her brilliance, as if standing too close to the sun. Observing this, Ashvapati spoke gently to his daughter. He recognized that she was unique and that her partner must be chosen with equal care. One morning, as the sun cast long shadows across the polished floors of the court, he suggested that she undertake a pilgrimage. He encouraged her to travel through the neighboring kingdoms and hermitages, guided by her own heart and wisdom, to seek a husband worthy of her, someone whose qualities resonated with her own. This was a rare freedom, reflecting the king's deep trust in his daughter's judgment. Savitri accepted this unusual task with her characteristic grace, accompanied by aged counselors and a modest retinue. She set out on her journey. Her golden chariot, adorned with white banners, moved slowly through the landscapes of ancient India. They passed through prosperous cities with high walls and deep moats, but Savitri's heart was drawn not to the centers of power, but to the quiet places. They traveled across fertile plains where the green rice paddies stretched to the horizon, the air warm and humid. The journey was long and unhurried, a gentle procession through a world steeped in tradition and natural beauty. Savitri observed the world with quiet attention. The rhythms of everyday life, the colors of the earth, and the vastness of the sky. They moved toward the sacred forests, the hermitages where exiled kings and revered sages practiced austerities and contemplated the eternal truths. The air grew cooler, scented with damp earth and ancient trees. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by the rustling of leaves, the calls of distant birds, and the murmur of flowing rivers. They traveled through ancient woodlands where the trees formed a canopy so thick that the sunlight dappled the ground like scattered gold coins. Savitri visited sacred sites and paid respect to the sages who lived in peaceful contemplation. Her search was not directed toward wealth or power, but toward virtue and character. Deep within one such forest, far from the centers of commerce, Savitri arrived at a serene hermitage in the kingdom of Shalva. The air here was different, thick with the scent of wood smoke and blooming jasmine, and vibrant with the sounds of birdsong and the chanting of Vedic hymns. It was a place of simple, natural beauty, amidst the towering sal trees and the sound of chanting. She encountered a young man. He was tall and strong, dressed in the simple ochre robes of an ascetic, yet carrying himself with the unmistakable grace of royalty. He was engaged in the duties of the hermitage, carrying wood for the sacred fires, and tending to the needs of an elderly couple. Savitri observed him quietly. She saw the kindness in his eyes as he guided his blind father, the diligence in his work, and the deep respect he held for all living beings. A profound sense of recognition stirred within her, a quiet certainty that this was the man she sought. She learned his story from the elders of the hermitage. This was Satyavan. He was the son of Dayamatsena, the rightful king of the Shalva kingdom. Dayamatsena, in his old age, had lost his sight. Raising this vulnerability, a neighboring usurper had driven him and his family from their kingdom. They had taken refuge in this forest, shedding the trappings of royalty and embracing a life of simplicity and spiritual pursuit. Satyavan, their only son, had devoted himself entirely to the care of his parents. He navigated the forest paths, gathered wild fruits and roots, and ensured their comfort in the wilderness. He was virtuous, intelligent, and compassionate, embodying the highest ideals of Dharma despite his misfortunes. In the peaceful setting of the hermitage, amidst the rustling leaves and the gentle flow of the nearby river, Savitri knew without doubt that she had found her partner ere a heart made its choice, firm and unwavering. With her decision made, she bid farewell to the hermitage, her mind filled with the image of the young prince, living a life of simple dignity. Her chariot turned back toward Madra, the journey home feeling swifter now that her purpose was fulfilled. When Savitri returned to her father's palace, she found King Ashvapati seated in his assembly hall, engaged in conversation with a celestial visitor. This was Narada, the divine sage, known for traveling freely between the heavens and the earth, carrying news and wisdom wherever he went. Narada's presence was always significant, often foreshadowing events of great consequence. As Savitri entered the court, the light seemed to catch her serene expression. Ashvapati welcomed his daughter and asked her about her journey. With quiet confidence, Savitri announced her choice. She described the hermitage in the forest, the blind and exiled King Dayamatsena, and his virtuous son Satyavan. As she spoke, a shadow passed over Narada's face. The sage acknowledged Satyavan's virtues. He confirmed that the young prince was indeed as radiant as the sun, as wise as Brihaspati, and as patient as the earth. Satyavan was truthful, generous, and free from envy. But then, with a tone of profound solemnity, Narada revealed a devastating truth. The Satyavan carried a single, inescapable flaw in his destiny. He was fated to die exactly 1 year. The prophecy was absolute. The end ordained. A hush fell over the assembly hall. The words hung in the air, stark and unavoidable. King Ashvapati, filled with sudden alarm for his beloved daughter, urged Savitri to reconsider. He pleaded with her to choose another, someone blessed with a long life, to avoid the inevitable widowhood and sorrow that this union would bring. But Savitri stood firm. Her mind was settled, her heart committed. Her voice, though soft, resonated with unwavering resolve. She explained that a choice made by the heart, especially one grounded in virtue and recognition of true worth, could be made only once. Whether his life be long or short, his virtues great or small, Satyavan was her chosen husband. She would not deviate from the path of Dharma. She accepted the fate that accompanied her choice. Narada observed Savitri's steadfastness. He saw not youthful stubbornness, but a profound understanding of duty and devotion. He recognized the strength of her spirit and gave his blessing to the union, acknowledging that her determination might perhaps hold the power to mitigate the impending doom. With a heavy heart, but respecting his daughter's wisdom, King Ashvapati began the preparations for the wedding. There was no grand celebration in the capital, no procession of princes or exchange of vast dowries. Instead, Ashvapati, accompanied by Savitri and a small group of priests, traveled to the forest hermitage in Shalva. The journey was quiet, the gravity of the prophecy accompanying them like an unseen traveler. When they arrived at the simple dwelling of Dayamatsena, Ashvapati formally requested the marriage. Dayamatsena, though honored by the proposal, expressed his hesitation. He pointed to the simplicity of their life, a stark contrast to the splendor Savitri was accustomed to. He worried that she would find the hardships of their exile too difficult. Ashvapati reassured him, speaking of Savitri's character and her readiness to embrace the life she had chosen. The wedding ceremony was conducted in the quiet seclusion of the wilderness, under the canopy of ancient trees. The sacred fire burned brightly. The hymns were chanted with solemn precision, and Savitri and Satyavan were united. Dayamatsena and his queen were overjoyed to welcome a daughter-in-law of such grace and virtue. Ashvapati, having ensured his daughter's transition, returned to Madra, leaving Savitri to begin her new life in the quiet forest. Thus Savitri embraced her new life with seamless grace. She shed her royal garments, replacing the fine silks and jewels with the simple robes made of bark and colored with red ochre. She discarded the ornaments that had adorned her in the palace, retaining only the sacred thread of marriage. Her beauty was now adorned only by her virtue and her devotion. Her days were filled with the quiet rhythms of the hermitage. She rose before dawn, the air cool and still, and began her prayers. She assisted her mother-in-law with the household chores, drawing water from the clear forest stream and preparing the simple meals of fruits and roots. She served her blind father-in-law with deep respect, anticipating his needs and listening attentively to his wisdom. She supported Satyavan in his duties, her presence a source of constant strength and comfort. Her presence brought a new light to the hermitage. She charmed everyone with her gentle nature, her sweet words, and her skillful management of the simple household. Satyavan, too, was deeply in love with his wife, finding in her a companion of profound depth and grace. They spent their evenings together, walking by the stream, listening to the sounds of the forest settling down for the night, the crickets chirping softly, the owls calling from the distance. Their life together was harmonious, a perfect blend of duty and love, lived in the serene embrace of nature. To the outside observer, Savitri appeared completely content, a model of wifely devotion and humility. Why yet, beneath this serene exterior, Savitri carried the heavy burden of Narada's prophecy. The words of the sage echoed constantly in her mind. She counted the days, one by one, as the year unfolded. The seasons turned slowly in the forest, each change a marker of the approaching fateful day. The vibrant blossoms of spring gave way to the intense heat of summer, the air thick with the scent of sun-baked earth. Then the monsoon arrived, the rains washing the forest clean, the rivers swelling, the landscape turning a deep, lush green. The air grew heavy and humid, filled with the scent of wet leaves and the chorus of frogs. The days grew shorter as autumn approached, bringing clear skies and cooler air, the leaves turning gold and crimson before falling softly to the ground. The winter brought a gentle chill, the mornings shrouded in mist, the smoke from the hearth fires rising straight into the still air. Throughout all these changes, Savitri remained steadfast, her devotion unwavering, her secret sorrow hidden from her husband and his parents. Satyavan, unaware of his impending fate, found deep happiness in his marriage, his love for Savitri growing stronger with each passing day. Savitri watched him with a mixture of profound love and deep anxiety, memorizing the sound of his laughter, the curve of his smile, the strength in his hands. She performed her duties with the same outward calm, ensuring that no one in the hermitage sensed her inner turmoil. She sought guidance from the ancient scriptures, spending long hours in meditation, strengthening her spirit for the trial she knew was coming. As the year drew to a close, the weight of the prophecy grew heavier. When only 4 days remained until the fated day, Savitri undertook a severe vow, known as the Triratra Virata. She resolved to fast completely, remaining standing day and night without rest. This was an austerity of immense difficulty, requiring tremendous physical and mental endurance, a focusing of all her energy and willpower. Dumatsena, observing her commitment, grew concerned for her health and gently urged her to moderate her vow, suggesting that such severe penance was too difficult even for the most seasoned ascetics. But Savitri, with respectful humility, assured him that her resolve was firm and that she had the strength to complete it. She maintained her vigil, her body growing weary, but her spirit remaining unbroken, a silent warrior preparing for a battle that only she could see. She continued to stand in prayer, her mind fixed on Satyavan, her spirit reaching out to the universe. The hermitage was enveloped in a palpable stillness, the air thick with the power of her austerity. The first night passed, the forest wrapped in darkness. The second day came, the sun climbing high, yet Savitri remained unmoving. The second night enveloped her, the air cooling. The third day arrived, and still she stood. The final night passed slowly. The stars wheeled overhead, silent witnesses to her vigil. Savitri remained motionless, her eyes closed, her breath steady. The dawn of the fated day arrived. As the sky painted in soft hues of pink and gold, Savitri completed her vow. The morning sun filtered through the leaves of the forest, casting a warm, gentle light over the hermitage. She performed her morning rituals, offering oblations to the sacred fire. It was the day that Narada had predicted, the day that had haunted her every moment for the past year. Ifa then went to her parents-in-law and the assembled elders, bowing respectfully to seek their blessings. They blessed her with the fulfillment of all her desires, unaware of the profound significance of their words on this particular morning. Satyavan, preparing for his daily tasks, picked up his axe, ready to venture into the deep woods to gather firewood. Normally he went alone, navigating the familiar paths with ease. But this morning, Savitri insisted on accompanying him. She pleaded that she could not bear to be separated from him, expressing a desire to see the deeper parts of the forest, the blooming trees, and the hidden streams. Satyavan was surprised, as she had never before ventured into the deeper, wilder parts of the forest with him. He warned her that the path was difficult, and that she might be weary from her recent fast. But Savitri insisted, her voice gentle yet firm. She assured him that she felt strong and eager to witness the beauty of the woods. Satyavan, seeing her determination, agreed. They informed Duyumatsena and his wife. The elderly couple granted their permission, requesting that they return before the evening settled. The two set out together, walking hand in hand into the dense forest. The morning was beautiful, the air fresh and cool. The forest was alive with the sounds of birdsong and the rustling of leaves. The path was narrow and winding, carpeted with dry leaves that crunched softly under their feet. Satyavan pointed out the various trees and flowering creepers to Savitri, his voice filled with enthusiasm for the natural world he loved so dearly. He showed her the clear streams where the deer came to drink, and the groves where peacocks displayed their magnificent plumage. He gathered wild fruits, filling a basket for their meals, his movements graceful and strong. Savitri walked beside him, absorbing the beauty of the surroundings, her eyes constantly resting on Satyavan, pulse mild, and listened to his words. Yet her heart was heavy, knowing that these moments were fleeting. She watched him, memorizing every detail of his face, the sound of his laughter, the way the sunlight caught in his hair. Her attention was divided between the beauty of the surroundings and the anxiety churning within her. She watched every move he made, her senses heightened, waiting for the inevitable moment. They reached a secluded spot, deep within the woods, surrounded by towering sal trees. Satyavan began his work, vigorously chopping wood from a large fallen branch. The sound of the axe echoed through the quiet grove. Savitri sat nearby on the soft grass, watching him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the heat intensified. He worked with vigor, the muscles in his arms straining with the effort. But soon the exertion began to take its toll. As he worked, Satyavan suddenly felt a sharp pain piercing his head. He stopped, leaning heavily on his axe. He felt dizzy and exhausted, as if all his strength had drained away. He approached Savitri, his face pale, his brow beaded with sweat. He complained of a severe headache and a burning sensation in his limbs. He told her that he felt ill, that his head was aching, and that he needed to rest. Savitri, though filled with apprehension, remained outwardly calm. Savitri, 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 Astali Savitri, Gitu Rivime Savitri, Litri, Savitri, Vive Starkonia, Azu Starkona, Li Savitri, Vive Starkona, Vive Starkona, Inian Savitri, and Noa Starkona, Tokona, Tokona, Azu Starkona, Azu Starkona, Azu Starkona, Tokona, 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 Azu Starkona, Azu Starkona, Azu Starkona, Tokona, Azu Starkona, Tokona, Azu Starkona, Tokona, Azu Starkona, Tokona, Azustakana, 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 Telkana, Azustakana, Azustakana, Telkana, Azustakana, 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 Telkana, Azustakana, 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 Azustakana. She knew that the moment foretold by Narada had arrived. She soothed him with gentle words, stroking his hair, her touch conveying all the love and strength she possessed. Her touch was soothing, her presence calming. Satyavan closed his eyes, seeking relief from the pain and fatigue. Satyavan's breath grew shallow. He murmured that he felt as if he were falling into a deep sleep. Hers eyes closed, and he lay still, his life. Savitri sat perfectly still, her heart pounding, but her demeanor composed. She watched over him, her gaze fixed on his face, her mind focused on the task ahead. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The birds ceased their singing. The wind stopped rustling the leaves. A profound silence descended upon the grove. Savitri sat motionless, holding her husband's lifeless body, her gaze fixed on the horizon. In that moment of stillness, a presence manifested before her. She saw a figure approaching. He appeared suddenly, as if emerging from the shadows of the trees. He was tall and majestic, clad in robes of deep crimson. His skin was dark as the night sky, his eyes luminous and penetrating, glowing with a deep reddish hue. He wore a crown that glittered with an otherworldly light. He was solemn and awe-inspiring, carrying a small noose in his hand. Savitri recognized him immediately. This was Yama, the god of death, the guardian of the underworld, and the upholder of Dharma. Yama's presence was solemn and powerful, inspiring awe rather than terror. He was not a malevolent entity, but a dutiful deity, fulfilling his ordained role in the cosmic order. He had come personally to collect the soul of Satyavan, an honor reserved for those of exceptional virtue. Yama approached the resting couple and fixed his gaze upon Satyavan. He acknowledged Savitri, his voice deep and resonant, echoing with the authority of cosmic law. He told her that her husband's time on earth had ended, that his lifespan was complete, and that he had come to take his soul. Savitri, though filled with grief, bowed respectfully to the deity. She understood the laws of life and death, and she did not try to prevent him from performing his duty. Yama, using his noose, carefully drew out Satyavan's soul from his body, a tiny, luminous essence, no bigger than a thumb. With the soul secured, Yama turned and began his journey southward, toward the realm of the departed. Satyavan's body lay still in Savitri's lap, lifeless and pale. The color had drained from his face, the warmth from his skin. As Yama turned to leave, Savitri gently laid Satyavan's head on the ground, beneath the sheltering branches of the banyan tree, and then, driven by a devotion that transcended the boundaries of life and death, she stood up and began to follow him. The path Yama took was not of the physical world, but a passage through the shadows, a journey into the unseen realms. The path was dark and unfamiliar, leading into the deepest, most shadowed parts of the forest. The terrain grew rough, the air colder. Yet Savitri, empowered by her devotion and the strength of her austerities, was able to perceive him and follow closely behind. She moved with unwavering determination, her gaze fixed on the retreating figure of the god of death Yama. Sensing her presence, turned to her. He was surprised to see a mortal woman following him on this path. He addressed her gently, acknowledging her devotion. He told her that her journey with her husband ended here. She had fulfilled her duties as a wife. The time had come for her to return to the living world and perform the funeral rites for Satyavan. No mortal could follow where he was going, or Savitri, however, did not turn back. She addressed Yama with deep respect, her voice calm and steady, filled with the wisdom she had cultivated throughout her life. She stated that wherever her husband is taken, she must follow. This was the eternal law of Dharma for a devoted wife. She argued that the bond between husband and wife was eternal, transcending death. She argued that through her penance, her devotion to her husband, and the grace of Yama himself, her path could not be obstructed. She then began to speak eloquently on the nature of righteousness. She emphasized the importance of association with the virtuous. She said that even a brief encounter with the righteous is beneficial, and friendship with them is even more so. Being in the presence of a great deity like Yama, the upholder of Dharma, could only lead to good. Yama was impressed by the wisdom and eloquence of her words. Her speech was not a desperate plea, but a reasoned argument. Grounded in the principles of Dharma, her speech was profound, delivered with perfect clarity and humility. He found her understanding of Dharma flawless. Pleased by her adherence to righteousness, he decided to grant her a boon. He said, "O virtuous lady, your words are pleasing to my heart. Ask for any boon you desire, except for the life of Satyavan, and I shall grant it." Savitri bowed respectfully. She thought of her father-in-law, Daimatsana, living in blindness and exile. She asked that his eyesight be restored, and that he regain his health and vigor, shining with the splendor he once possessed. Yama readily granted this boon. Acknowledging the selflessness of her request, he said, "So shall it be. Your father-in-law's blindness will vanish, and he will regain his glory." Having granted the boon, Yama continued on his path, moving deeper into the shadowy realms. The landscape around them seemed to shift subtly, the air growing cooler, the light dimmer. He hoped that she would now turn back, but Savitri continued to follow him, undeterred. The path grew even more difficult, winding through dense thickets of thorns and over sharp rocks. The darkness deepened, the shadows lengthening. Yama again urged her to return, reminding her that the journey was long and arduous, and she would become weary. But Savitri replied that she felt no weariness when she was near her husband. She continued to speak, this time emphasizing the virtue of compassion. She stated that the righteous show mercy to all beings, even to their enemies. They harbor no ill will and strive to protect those who seek their refuge. The truly virtuous are the foundation of the world, upholding the universe through their adherence to truth and kindness. She praised Yama for his impartial justice, for maintaining the cosmic order, and for ensuring that every soul received the fruits of their actions. Her words were soothing, profound, and deeply respectful. Yama listened intently, increasingly pleased by the depth of her understanding and the purity of her heart. Her words resonated with his own commitment to universal law. Her understanding of Dharma was profound, her devotion unwavering. He offered her a second boon. Your speech is filled with wisdom and righteousness. Ask for another boon, anything except the life of Satyavan. Savitri asked that Dharmatsena regain his lost kingdom, that he be restored to his rightful place. As the ruler of Shalva, granted this boon as well. Recognizing the righteousness of her desire to see justice restored, he urged her once more to return, warning her that the journey was becoming too arduous for a mortal. He then resumed his journey, moving swiftly through the ethereal landscape. Savitri, however, remained close behind him. The path grew more difficult, traversing realms untouched by mortal feet. She walked alongside Yama, the distance between them narrowing. Yama once more addressed her, advising her to turn back, as she had come a long way. Yama once more addressed her, advising her to turn back, as she had come a long way. Savitri replied that the distance was insignificant, for her mind was focused on her destination. She continued to discourse on the importance of truth. She said that the sun shines by truth, the wind blows by truth, and the earth is sustained by truth. The truth is the highest Dharma, and the righteous always adhere to it. They never break their promises and always fulfill their obligations. The cooperation between the virtuous is based on mutual trust and respect. She emphasized that even the gods themselves were bound by the laws of Dharma, and that their greatness lay in their adherence to these principles. Her words were like a garland of fresh flowers, beautiful and fragrant, offered in reverence to the deity. Yama was deeply moved by her profound insights and her unwavering determination. Understanding of the subtle nuances of Dharma was exceptional. He acknowledged the depth of her wisdom and offered her a third boon. O faultless lady, the more you speak, the more my respect for you increases. Ask for a third boon, but still not the life of Satyavan. Savitri then thought of her own father, Ashvapati, who had performed long austerities for a child, and who desired sons to continue his lineage. She asked that her father be blessed with 100 strong sons, ensuring the continuation of his royal dynasty. Yama granted this boon, acknowledging the depth of her filial devotion. He was astonished by her selflessness. Even in this dire situation, her thoughts were focused on the welfare of others. Your father shall have 100 noble sons, who will bring glory to his name. Still, Savitri did not turn back. They walked together through the deepening twilight, the boundary between the mortal world and the realm of the dead growing thinner. Savitri spoke again, summarizing the essence of Dharma, the eternal law that governs the universe. She spoke of truth, non-violence, and the sanctity of the given word. So her speech was a masterpiece of wisdom, delivered with humility and grace. She emphasized that her mind was fixed on her husband, and she could not exist without him. She spoke eloquently on the nature of true companionship, the bond between husband and wife that transcends the physical realm. She argued that the blessings she had received were meaningless without Satyavan Vayama, completely captivated by her virtue and eloquence, recognized that he was in the presence of an extraordinary soul. He was deeply moved by her profound love and her unwavering commitment. Her words were flawless, imbued with wisdom, righteousness, and deep emotion. He felt compelled to recognize the purity of her heart and the strength of her spirit. He offered her a final boon, this time without any conditions. Praising her as the epitome of womanly virtue, he encouraged her to ask for something truly significant. Savitri saw the opportunity she had patiently created. With profound respect, she asked that she herself be blessed with 100 sons, born of her union with Satyavan, strong and virtuous, who would continue their Yama, impressed by her persistence and the nobility of her desire, readily granted this boon as well. You shall have 100 noble sons, who will bring you great joy and renown. He then continued on his way, assuming she would now be satisfied. But Savitri stood still, looking at Yama with a calm and steady gaze. She addressed him one last time, her voice gentle yet firm. She praised him as the son of Vivasvat, the sun god, and the impartial administrator of justice. She pointed out the implication of the boon he had just granted her. If she were to have 100 sons born of her union with Satyavan, then Satyavan must live. The boon could not be fulfilled otherwise. She reminded him that the righteous never let their words go in vain. His promise must be realized. The words of the Lord of Dharma himself cannot be false. Vayama stopped. He recognized the irrefutable logic and the profound truth in her words. He realized the subtle truth in her argument. He had been outwitted by her wisdom and her adherence to Dharma. But more than being outwitted, he was profoundly pleased by her unparalleled devotion, her intelligence, and her righteousness. She had demonstrated the power of a virtuous life and the strength of unwavering love. Their actions had upheld the highest principles of Dharma, and her acknowledged her victory, a victory won not through force or deception, but through the power of love, wisdom, and unwavering devotion. With a benevolent smile, Yama released the soul of Satyavan. He declared that Satyavan's life was restored. He praised Savitri for her virtue, assuring her that her name would be remembered for eternity as a symbol of wifely devotion. He blessed the couple with a long life of 400 years, during which they would live together in prosperity and happiness. Upholding righteousness, he assured her that her sons would be great kings, and her father's lineage would also flourish. Having bestowed these blessings, Yama, the great upholder of cosmic law, vanished from her sight. The shadowy realm dissolved around her, and she found herself back in the familiar forest, the air now cool with the approach of evening to Savitri. Her heart overflowing with gratitude and relief, turned back toward the mortal world. The journey back felt effortless, the path illuminated by the rising moon. The forest, which had seemed so dark and forbidding moments before, now appeared serene and beautiful. The air was cool and refreshing, the night sky studded with countless stars. She moved swiftly through the moonlit clearings, her feet barely touching the ground, guided by an instinct that recognized the familiar landmarks. She soon reached the banyan tree where Satyavan's body lay. The clearing was bathed in the soft, silvery light of the moon, illuminating the still form of her husband. Savitri sat down beside him, gently lifting his head back onto her lap. She watched him intently, waiting for the return of life, or slowly, the color returned to his face, the warmth to his skin. His chest began to rise and fall with the rhythm of breath. His breath deepened, his eyelids fluttered, and he opened his eyes. He looked at Savitri with confusion. As if waking from a long and deep sleep, he recognized Savitri, his expression filled with love and concern. He seemed completely unaware of what had transpired. He asked her why they were still in the forest, why the night had fallen. He felt refreshed, as if he had rested well, but he also remembered the pain he had felt before falling asleep. He remembered the exhaustion that had overcome him. He then spoke of a strange dream he had, a vision of a dark, majestic figure, a stranger who seemed to be carrying him away. He asked Savitri if it was a dream, or if it was real, or if it was merely a hallucination caused by his illness. Savitri gently soothed him, her voice soothing and gentle, reassured him. She told him that he had indeed slept long, and that the majestic being he saw was the great god Yama. She assured him that the danger had passed, and that everything was well. She explained that the danger had passed, and that they were now safe. She said she would explain everything in detail later, but now the night was deepening, and they must return to the hermitage. The forest was growing dark, and his parents would be worried. Satyavan looked around, realizing how late it had become. The sun had set long ago, and the forest was enveloped in darkness, illuminated only by the soft glow of the moon. He grew anxious about his elderly parents, knowing how much they relied on him. He worried about how they would manage without him, and how distressed they must be by his absence. Savitri helped him to stand up. He felt strong and rejuvenated, the earlier illness completely gone. He stood up slowly, trusting Savitri completely. They began their journey back to the hermitage. The path was dark and difficult to navigate. Savitri, resourceful as ever, gathered some dry twigs and kindled a small fire, creating a torch to light their way. The walk was slow and unhurried, the silence of the forest broken only by the sounds of nocturnal creatures. Savitri held the basket of fruits in one hand and supported Satyavan with the other, her presence a source of strength and comfort. Satyavan, still concerned about his parents, urged her to walk faster. Savitri, knowing the blessings that awaited them, walked with a calm and steady pace, guiding him through the dense woods. The forest at night was a different world, the shadows deep and mysterious. Lape, Sate, Sate, Meanwhile, back at the hermitage, a miracle had occurred. Dayamatsana had suddenly regained his sight. His world, which had been shrouded in darkness for years, was suddenly filled with light and color, and his wife were overjoyed, their hearts filled with gratitude. But their joy was soon overshadowed by anxiety. The sun had set, the night had fallen, and Satyavan and Savitri had not returned from the forest. They knew the wilderness was dangerous, filled with wild animals and hidden perils. Dyumatsana, newly sighted, paced anxiously around the hermitage, his concern growing with every passing moment. The other residents of the hermitage shared their anxiety, lighting torches and venturing out into the nearby paths, calling out their names, their voices filled with distress. One of the sages, possessing foresight, assured Dyumatsana that Satyavan and Savitri were safe and unharmed. He prophesied that they would return soon, and that great fortune awaited them. As the night deepened, the search party heard footsteps approaching. They raised their torches, peering into the darkness. And then, emerging from the shadows of the trees, they saw Satyavan and Savitri walking slowly toward the hermitage, the light of their torch preceding them. A wave of relief washed over the assembled ascetics. They rushed forward to welcome them, their voices filled with joy and concern. Dyumatsana and his wife embraced their son and daughter-in-law, their hearts overflowing with emotion. Dyumatsana, seeing his son and daughter-in-law clearly for the first time in many years, embraced them warmly. The hermitage was filled with celebration. Inside the hermitage, seated around the warm glow of the hearth fire, the family listened as the events of the day were recounted. The ascetics, curious about the reasons for their late return and the miraculous restoration of Dyumatsana's sight, gathered around the sacred fire. They asked Satyavan what had happened. Satyavan, still bewildered by the events of the day, deferred to Savitri. With humility and grace, Savitri narrated the entire sequence of events. She revealed the prophecy of Narada, her year-long vigil, her severe vow, the death of Satyavan, and her encounter with Yama. She recounted their long conversation, the wisdom she shared, and the boons she had obtained, the restoration of Dyumatsana's sight and kingdom, the 100 sons for her father, and 100 sons for herself, which ultimately led to the restoration of Satyavan's life. The assembled sages listened in awe, their hearts filled with admiration for this remarkable woman. They praised her devotion, her wisdom, and her unwavering adherence to Dharma. They recognized that she had not only saved her husband's life, but had also brought prosperity and happiness to both their families. They declared that her virtue had saved 2 royal lineages from ruin. They blessed the couple, prophesying a long and prosperous life dedicated to Dharma. The hermitage was filled with a profound sense of peace and divine grace. The night was spent in quiet celebration, the atmosphere of the hermitage filled with peace and gratitude. As the night deepened, the celebration subsided, and the residents of the hermitage retired to rest. But the night held one more event. As dawn broke over the forest, another event unfolded, confirming the power of the boons granted by Yama. A group of messengers arrived from the Shalwa kingdom. They brought news that the usurper who had driven Dyumatsana from his throne had been killed by his own ministers. The people of Shalva, recalling the just and benevolent rule of Dyumatsana, unanimously desired his return as their king. They had searched for him and traced him to the forest hermitage, eager to escort him back to his capital. The messengers bowed before Dyumatsana, urging him to return and resume his rightful place on the throne. Dyumatsana, his sight restored and his heart filled with joy, accepted the call of his people. The time of exile was over. The next morning, the forest hermitage, which had been their sanctuary for so many years, was filled with activity. Preparations were made for their departure. The family prepared to leave the forest hermitage, bidding farewell to the sages who had sheltered them for so long. Dharmasena, accompanied by his queen, Satyavan, and Savitri, set out for the Shalva kingdom. They were escorted by the royal procession, the atmosphere filled with joy and anticipation. The procession back to the Shalva kingdom was joyous, a celebration of the restoration of justice and the triumph of virtue. They reached the capital city of Shalva, where they were received with great enthusiasm and celebration. Dharmasena was crowned king. Once again, his reign marked by justice and prosperity. He resumed his rule, his governance marked by wisdom and compassion. Satyavan was installed as the crown prince, assisting his father in the governance of the kingdom. Savitri, now the princess of Shalva, continued to live a life of virtue and devotion, her presence bringing grace and wisdom to the court. In due course, the other boons also came to fruition. In the kingdom of Madra, King Ashvapati was blessed with 100 sons, securing the future of his lineage. And in the kingdom of Shalva, Savitri and Satyavan, ruling with righteousness and grace, were also blessed with 100 strong sons, ensuring the prosperity of their kingdom for generations to come. They lived a long and happy life, their reign marked by peace, justice, and abundance. Their love deepened with the passing years. Their story became a legend, an eternal symbol of the power of devotion, the strength of virtue, and the triumph of love over destiny. The story of Savitri's devotion became a legend, whispered by the rivers, carried by the winds, and etched into the memory of the land. The kingdom of Shalva flourished under their gentle rule. The land was fertile, the rivers flowed steadily, and the people lived in peace and harmony. The fields yielded bountiful harvests, the rivers flowed with clear, sweet water, and the people lived in contentment, their lives guided by the principles of Dharma. The wisdom of Savitri and the valor of Satyavan ensured the well-being of all. Their lives were a testament to the truth that steadfast adherence to Dharma can overcome even the greatest obstacles. The lamps in the homes burned brightly, their warm light reflecting the inner peace of the inhabitants. As the years passed gently, the memory of that fateful day in the forest remained etched in their hearts, a reminder of the profound connection between love and an unwavering commitment to righteousness. The palace halls echoed with the laughter of their children, the evenings filled with the gentle strains of music and the scent of incense. As the stars wheel slowly across the night sky, the memory of Savitri endures, a testament to the quiet strength of devotion and the gentle power of wisdom. The rivers continued their slow journey to the sea, the stars maintained their silent vigil in the night sky, and the earth continued its patient rotation. The world rests, enveloped in the soft embrace of the night, the silence broken only by the murmur of the wind through the trees and the distant flow of the river, carrying the eternal story of love's triumph over fate. In the quietude of the night, the story of Savitri and Satyavan whispered through the ages, a gentle lullaby promising that love, when rooted in truth, is eternal and unchanging. The lamps burned low, casting a soft, warm glow, as peace settled over the land, deep and undisturbed. The land sleeps peacefully, bathed in the silvery light of the moon, secure in the knowledge that virtue prevails,